So in today's lesson, what we're going to do, we're going to start talking about color theory, and then finally we are going to aim to use our painting skills to mix and match colors. So today we've got what we need. We've got our paints, we've got our test paper, we've got our brush, of course, half a pot of cold water and some tissue paper. If we start off just talking about some basic facts about color theory. This is an example of a color wheel. You might find much more complex color wheels than this, and they will have many more shades of color in between the primary colors. Now, primary colors, red, blue and yellow, are colors which can't be mixed. And then secondary colors are colors which are made from primary colors. So you have between blue and yellow, you have green. And again, between blue and red, you have a violet. Some people say purple. And between yellow and red, you have orange. And then the different ranges of colors in between those colors. And as I said, you can have very complex color wheels. So primary colors cannot be mixed, red, blue and yellow. Secondary colors are mixed by using two primary colors, and then tertiary colors are mixed using equal amounts of primary and secondary colors. So for example, this blue-green is a tertiary color because you're using equal amounts of green and blue. In other words, it's got a little bit more blue in it than it has yellow, because this is roughly half yellow and half blue, and then this is blue. So if you think about the mathematics, generally here you have about 1/3 yellow in this and 2/3 blue, because that's blue, and obviously this is half blue already. Now there are a few other little facts to think about, things like tints and shades and tones. Tints are where you lighten a color with white. A shade is where you darken a color with black, and a tone is when you change a color with gray. Some people think of black and white as not colors, but for this purposes, if you look at your palette, you have black and you have white, so we'll consider them to be color. And there are a few extra information here for you to think about regarding complementary colors, regarding the difference between warm and cool colors, and then obviously brown, which is often referred to as a tertiary color or a neutral color, and how brown is generally made by mixing complementary colors with each other. You also get a brown by mixing red, blue and yellow together. So if we now think about our color matching exercise, we are going to try to mix these colors exactly and paint them as neatly and accurately as we can in these different sections. So I'll just do one to start off with to give you an idea, and we'll talk while we do this about certain tips and good practices to adopt while we are painting. So first of all, cleaning our paints. If you've got paints like these, you've got two whites. One I would keep clean and one for mixing color. So this one's already had some color mixed in it. So how we would clean our paints, we would wet them down, because this color is quite dry on top of here now. Try to re-wet all those colors, and the wonderful things about watercolor, of course, you can re-wet them, and if they're on a painting you can re-blend them. But of course they're an absolute disaster if you spilled water on top of them, because it would smudge everywhere. So you clean your white by wiping it with tissue paper. Don't, whatever you do, try to run it under the tap, because that'll ruin your paints. And then just clean one more time. So pretty good for now. So we're going to try to mix up this grey. So the first one is a grey. Now when you're mixing colours, as we said, you're going to mix up your black, and instead of mixing black and white together on the black to make the grey, you would always mix on the lightest colour. So I'm going to mix my colour, pop that out of the way, tiny bit more water, and after I think it looks about right, I'm going to test it on some scrap paper, and I'm going to test it for two things. One, to make sure it's the right colour, and that looks a little bit light, and one, to make sure it's not too watery or too thick and it flows off the brush. And that looks too watery and it looks too light. I'm going to take a little bit more black, and I'm going to try and mix this around a little bit more to do it. Bit more black. Now that looks pretty good. Now remember what we said, when you mix your colours, tiny bit more water I think, if you mix them and twirl the brush to a point, you are going to have a better opportunity to mix. And now we're going to paint that section. Now we're painting with the tip of the brush, so when I go around to the other side, I'm going to try to use the point of the brush to get right into the corners. Now my brush is starting to run out of paint now, so what I need to do is I now need to mix up a little bit more, tiny bit more water, a little bit more black. Notice I didn't dip my brush in the paint, in the water pot, sorry, very deeply, because I didn't want too much. Check my colour again. Little bit light, tiny bit more black. Looks pretty good. Twisting my brush to a point and now get into this corner. Now, what I suggest you do, which might be a good technique for you to try to learn, I'm trying to match each colour, but I'm trying to leave a really thin, accurate white line in between both colours. So that now is a pretty good match. So what you now have to do is you have to do the same with all of these colours. So a couple of tips for you. Number one, none of these colours are a shade, so none of them have been used by adding black. Some of them might have been mixed by using white, but none of them have been mixed by adding black. Secondly, this is quite a dark green, so you have to decide in your mixing, is this dark green similar to this or this? Well, I can tell you straight away it isn't. So am I going to mix this dark green by using blue and yellow, just like the green is mixed by blue and yellow? Am I going to mix it and it's quite dark, so it's got more blue? Or am I going to mix it starting off with one of these greens and either adding blue to make it darker or yellow to make it lighter? Am I going to mix them both together? And obviously if I'm mixing with yellow and blue, I've got one yellow but I've got two blues. So there are a range of ways to get to the right colour. This red, for example, how am I going to get this red? Because this red is too dark and this red is too light. So how am I going to mix the correct colour? This is a purpley colour, but it's quite light, so how do I get it? How do I mix that colour? This colour is a bit harder to see. It's a brownish colour. And again, how am I going to mix it? How am I going to mix it? Because we've got 3 shades of brown. And of course, we also know that brown is made by mixing complementary colours with each other colour. Or I said brown is used by mixing a combination of red, yellows and blues. And then finally we've got this color at the end. How are you going to mix that? So there's a few facts on color theory and a few tips on painting. I think it's always quite a good idea when you have finished painting to leave your paints clean. Of course you can do them when they are dry, but the paints come off the surface of the colour you've done. And remember, you are always mixing the colour on the lighter colour. So for example, if you mix green by using blue and yellow, you would mix the blue on top of the yellow, not the yellow on top of the blue. That's so you can see it easier. You can see the green on the yellow much better than you could see the green if you mixed it on top of the blue. So that is basic colour theory and the colour mixing and matching exercise.